The talk all deadline day was, when were the Crows going to get a trade done? And they did it. They got a trade done. Just wasn't for the player people were expecting. Finnbar Maley has moved from North Melbourne. He was the 2024 mid-season draft pickup, and he is now a part of the Crom. What does this mean for North? Is this got some hurt factor for them at all? For the Crows, it's not like they need another tall, but we can see why they've done it. We'll unpack that, let alone talk to you about the AFL Fantasy and SuperCoach potential impacts in 2026. It's MJ from the Coaches Panel. I do hope you're well. I trust you've enjoyed this series as we've gone through every single player that's moved clubs, dropped you our thoughts about them and the fantasy implications for the upcoming season. Not too many people know much about Finnbar. They know he's got an absolute ripping mustache. They can just tell by watching the way he speaks in and around media interviews that he's got a fair sense of personality. But there's some skill set there that's certainly got some elite AFL traits, while there's a lot that needs some development too. He played 7 games this year for North Melbourne after getting on the list in 2024, missed out in the back half of the year, but earned his way onto the list now as they experimented and discovered who they might choose to retain and keep on this list. But 7 games, 3 of them where he gets subbed out of it, a mid-30s average for fantasy and for SuperCoach across the formats. But the thing that Finnbar, I think, does at a really high level for AFL standard, and again, elite's probably a little too generous a terminology, but it's still very strong, is he's got vice-like hands in contested and overhead marking situations. Got a really nice leap on him and gets a good grip on the footy as well, which is a really difficult task in AFL level. And when you need that outlet down the line, whether it be a deep entry inside forward 50 or you're just trying to kick the ball out of your D50 where you're like, man, we just got to get it out and break this line. We can't run it through. We've just got to get an overhead grab. He's got that skill set about him. So I really like that part of Finnbar's game. He's got some really strong elite traits when it comes to his overhead and contested marking. Other parts of his game definitely need a little bit of work in terms of some consistency in front of goals, really awkward looking kick, and not just awkward to look at, but awkward sometimes in its efficiency. But again, he's a very nothing draft trade in that currency space. It wouldn't have shocked me if North Melbourne were letting him go politely off the back of, given how he's been valued in the trade currency move. But there's some nice stuff about him in that ruck forward craft. But again, it's his overhead marking that looks good. What does this mean for North? Well, as I alluded to, I think there might have been a place where they genuinely could have just let him go. He may have been on his way out the door, and so to get a little bit of draft capital for it is great. But clearly North Melbourne, I think they look pretty set on where they could structure up this forward line long term. They've invested heavily in Whitlock. They would have had a very early pick this year had they not made that trade. Curtis looks like a real dynamic, like all Australian caliber small forward. So I like that move for them. And even then from the height side, you've got Trembath, who they got this year as a mid-season guy, Larky, Zerha. There's some nice height through there, and Darling's got at least 12 more months anyway. So I do feel like Finnbar was experimented with, given a handful of games. But when you've got the likes of Zerha, Larky, Trembath, Whitlock, Darling as kind of helping them protect the development of some of those guys, just from a long-term perspective, he was only ever going to get depth at best. So I can see why the club are like, just let him go. That's fine. We've got kind of what we take. And Trembath already showed him in a more limited set of games some other dimensions of his footballing that were a bit more developed than what Finnbar's was. Again, Finnbar, great overhead mark, but the other areas really need to grow. And that's clearly what the Crows have gone and got him is it's a developmental project and a younger, and I use this term loosely, a little more upside on a Chris Burgess who was delisted. Chris is a friend of the channel. Hello, mate. Can't wait to see you start a rival fantasy podcast. But I look at the Crows list, and yes, they've got the 3-headed tall monsters of Fogarty, Thilthorpe, Walker. But there were moments last year then when they decided to run a third tall if one of those guys were out with being rested, which was in Walker's case, or injuries or things like that. It didn't quite feel like it landed the way they liked. Like they got Tyler Walsh as a father-son at the end of last year. He's still not yet ready. It does appear they want Dan Curtin to move into the inside mid and to become a real strike, powerful midfielder that's got that height about him, almost a duplication of a Jordan Dawson. And as a result, okay, well, no longer is he going to develop into that third tall aerobic forward that Walker was. They kind of need a little bit more depth, especially letting Burgess go. Now, so if they didn't get Finnbar, Chris probably stays on the list as the insurance policy that's played AFL, can play in the ruck and be okay, can play in the forward line and take a decent contested mark too. I just feel like he's a direct replacement for Chris at a younger age with, I think the club would certainly be hoping with maybe a little bit more elevation of potential. So yeah, he's not in best 23. He's going to take, it's going to take two of Phil Thorpe, Fogarty, Walker, two of them to be missing the game for Finnbar to be a consideration. And even then the Crows might structure up a little bit differently. So definitely depth, not an AFL Fantasy or SuperCoach relevant guy. Yeah, okay, he's not priced too far off a rookie, so that's healthy. But it's going to take the Crows getting pillaged with height in the forward line for him to get opportunities. And even then, I just don't see a world where he can consistently go 50 plus to be able to make it that worthwhile move. So nice depth, but not really fantasy relevant at all in 2026. What I do want to know, if you're watching this video, make sure you've liked and subscribed to the channel if you have. Crows, what do you think the forward line for Adelaide looks like in 2026? If you're not a Crows fan, why don't you comment below and let me know. The midfield we know is an area of improvement, but from a forward line, who and how do you see it structuring up? Any difference? Are they going three-headed monster? Are they changing it up? Would love to know your thoughts in the comments below if you're watching this as a video. And of course, the audio podcast. Get in touch with us across social media to be able to reach out, get your thoughts heard as well. Inside the description of this episode, not only are the links to follow our social media, but also where you can get your hands on becoming a Patreon. Our Patreons get year-round content. Regardless of the tier, there's always something for you. And right now, we are dropping a special series that's focused on Keeper and Dynasty League draft players. If you love playing that format, this series is a must for you. It's hidden behind the paywall. We will not make it publicly available. But if you become a Patreon right now, you'll get access to that. A number of the series episodes have already dropped about halfway through. If you want to keep up to date with us, jump on in. We'd love you to be aware of who we think are the most important players to have in a Keeper and Dynasty League. We've ranked the top 50 for you, so make sure you go and check that out. Hey, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back with another player that's moved clubs and giving you our AFL Fantasy and SuperCoach reflections on them and the trading moves around them for this most recent and upcoming AFL Fantasy and SuperCoach season.